need to look at what the causes are and not to blame it on capitalism. We need to blame it on basically where the blame should lie, and that's with the Federal Reserve controlling the price of money. If interest is the price of money, you can't really argue that it's a free market when the price of money is being manipulated and controlled by the Federal Reserve. I often tell people that interest rates are like insulin, or they should be like insulin in the marketplace. As the economy heats up and there's more demand and bidding for money, the interest rates will rise, and they will have sort of a natural tamponading effect or a homeostasis, kind of the maintenance of a balance occurs. And so when your interest rate is 0%, all products, all projects, all capital investment will begin. But when interest rates are 10%, maybe only the best projects, the ones that have a chance of paying back 10% interest, so you'll have a slowing of the economy as interest rates rise. And if this is allowed to be done naturally, interest rates, they are a great barometer in the economy and keep the economy from growing too fast or too large. But if you keep them at 0%, you create huge bubbles that eventually there will be repercussions and a correction.
You talked in some of your speeches about the Roman Empire quite a bit, and at the end of an empire, they would placate the Romans as they were looting the country, as they were looting the empire and the treasury. And you mentioned cash for clunkers as an example of that. Two things here, Rand. Is the country being looted? And are we placating U.S. citizens as that's going on, as they're looting? Are they sort of placating us with these little throwing bread at the crowd kind of thing?
Yeah, and I think we're tinkering at the edges, and it's a distraction. You know, cash for clunkers, you can't meet any individual, even with a high school education on the street, who believes that cash for clunkers is going to work. I mean, nobody believes you can print up money, give it to you, and then you're supposed to go to the mall or go to the car dealer and buy something. If that would work, why wouldn't we do it all the time? Why wouldn't we give thousands of dollars to people? And I think the American people are smart enough to know that that isn't real, but you do give people money, they will take it, as long as the money has some value. But ultimately what will happen through all of these shenanigans is the money will lose its value. The only question is it going to be a slow erosion, or whether or not we might face a catastrophic erosion of the value of the dollar?
I just have three more quick items for you here, and maybe it's not justified to make it quick on these, but you graduated Duke Medical. You've been a practicing physician for quite some time. What are your thoughts on this health care proposal that they were trying to rush and push through?
I think it would be a disaster for us. I think the first question you have to ask is whether or not the problems we face in healthcare are too much government involvement or too little government. Most of the Obama-type plans that are out there, they all believe that the answer is more government. I would argue that the problems we face in healthcare currently are because we have too much government involvement already. Over 55% of what I do is already paid for by the government. All of the people on Medicare and Medicaid have fixed prices, so there is no price mobility. Prices don't go up and down. So really what we need to do is figure out how to go to a healthcare system where you not only have private ownership and profit, but you have to have mobility of prices. The only way you get that is through something with higher deductibles and multi-year policies. So, for example, the answer to portability and pre-existing conditions would all be answered if you would make health insurance more like term life insurance. With term life insurance, I have a 20-year plan, and if I have a heart attack and survive, my term life insurance doesn't go up because I've got a 20-year contract and they can't go up. But if my health insurance, if I have a heart attack and survive, I only have a 1-year plan, they'll double and triple my rates. Even my current rates, and I'm not using my health insurance much because I have a high deductible, they're going up at 17% a year. But Congress is missing the debate. Congress is driving this whole debate on access to health care when in reality the problem is expense of health care. And the reason why health care is so expensive is because there is no competition, no price competition, and no mobility of prices.
Last two things here. There is no way to read these bills before they vote. That was a line from one of your speeches, and you may have said that a number of times. Isn't it disturbing, Rand, because you bring this up, that there's an 1,100-page bill that gets put out by God only knows who's behind it, the special interest groups and whoever. We don't want to get into that right now. And that the lawmakers are supposed to vote on it by noon the next day. What's happening with our government? How did we get here?
You know, a big part of what's going on with the Tea Party movement and all these different protests is that people want reform of their government. They want to have congressmen who are passing legislation that's been written by congressmen and read by congressmen. And not only are they not reading it, they're not even writing it. Half the time the special interests are writing it. When the bank bailout bill came back, there were members of Congress who had lobbyists calling them saying, what are you going to do about Section 42B? And the congressman would say, well, we haven't seen the bill yet. And the lobbyists would say, well, we've got a copy of it. So the lobbyists have the bill before the congressmen and are often in charge of writing the bills. And it's a crime. But I think American people are fed up with it. If we can get some good candidates out there who will talk about these issues, I think we could throw some of the rascals out and bring them home.
And in closing here, we brought up the inflation briefly earlier, but how much does it worry you, this idea of runaway or rampant inflation? Because you brought up the elderly in some of your interviews and speeches. They're on fixed incomes. How will they survive with runaway rampant inflation? How will they even feed themselves?
Yeah, I think it could be disastrous, and that's why I think you can have sort of civilization-jarring event if you have 25 or 30% inflation. You think about and you read any local newspaper anywhere across America, when gas prices go up 20 cents or 30 cents, that's what everybody talks about and what everybody writes the letter to the editor. When that happens in the grocery store as well as the pump simultaneously, you're going to have a real problem in this country. I mean, currently we're raising Social Security benefits about 2.7% a year, and they're lagging behind even real inflation at that. And so senior citizens are getting pinched on that. But it's going to be worse. When you have 20 and 30% inflation, you can never keep up. So I think there could be some real problems. But that's why we need to be out there with the answers and presenting a case for what happened and how we can correct it so the answer doesn't become just a strong leader who wants more government.
And Rand, just in closing here, I want to talk about how people can get involved in your campaign or how they can contribute. I'm going to have something directly on your interview page that will link to your website so people can go over there and make a donation. And as everyone who has been listening to our network knows, this is a nonpartisan network and we have people on from both sides of the aisle, but I would encourage every single one of you to please go contribute to Dr. Rand Paul's campaign. We'll have the link directly on the website. Rand, if they want to go directly to your website on their own, how would they do that? Can you just tell them where to go and how they would do that?
Yes, if you go to randpaul2010.com, you can visit our website. We've got a large issues section. There's also the ability to donate directly on the website, and that's randpaul2010.com.
And also, aren't you going to have a big fundraising event on the 23rd of this month that's being organized?
Well, a lot of the grassroots have gotten involved because 23 U.S. senators are going to be raising money for my Republican primary opponent. And so they thought it would be fun to have their own little fundraising that day. And they have a website called KentuckyFight.com. And they've had fun playing around with pictures on there. And 17 of the 23 senators voted for the U.S. bank bailout. So we immediately came out and said, guess what? We won't take any money from any senators or institutions that are taking money from the bank bailout. And so we've had some fun with that, and we think we may raise as much money as they do on September 23rd. So it's kind of like a little mini money bomb that they're trying to set up and ignite on September 23rd. But you can check it out at our main website, randpaul2010.com, or you can also look at this pledge website, which is KentuckyFight.com.
Rand, I know we need to close here, but these guys are basically trying to keep, and I don't want to pick on any party, either Democrats or Republicans, but they're basically trying to keep business as usual. They don't want you to win. They've handpicked a candidate, and they want to have this guy go in rather than you. I mean, it's unimaginable to me that I live in a country where you would not, in the environment we're in now, win in Kentucky and defeat that business as usual agenda.
Well, I think we have a great chance to do it. We've already had polls that have shown us dead even with the Democrat, the leading Democrat in the fall, and within striking distance of the establishment Republican candidate. So I think it's pretty amazing how far we've come, and we have not yet run any television advertising. We've raised enough money that there are no questions of our credibility, and it's a dogfight. I mean, we're right in the midst of this, and we will give them one heck of a fight. It's hard to beat the establishment, and so it is a little bit of an uphill battle, but it's amazing how far we've come in such a short time, and we're ready to shock them and the country when we win this thing.
Well, Rand, thank you for joining us, and I want to say to the listeners, we're going to try to have you on repeatedly all the way through to your victory and try to help raise some funds for this cause, and I thank you so much for taking your time to join us on King World News.
Thank you. Good to be with you.
Thank you for joining us at KingWorldNews.com. Remember to tune in next week where we will have legendary Jim Sinclair from JSMindset.com, also Chris Whalen from Institutional Risk Analytics, and much more. Also remember to go to our Gold Plus page for exclusive weekly interviews with Ted Butler and Gatta, and the business section for Barry Ritholtz.